Dan Rossi is with me right now. Obviously, we're not in person. We're doing everything remotely these days, and maybe for the rest
I'm
of
in
our
my
careers.
basement.
And I'm super glad to have you on. It's our first guest that we've had. So Dan is the CRO of Geekwire. Although, did you change titles recently?
No, I'm the CRO of Geekwire.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Geekwire is a local Seattle magazine. If you don't know about it, you should. Really focus on the tech stuff, but it's become one of my local sources every single day these days for checking news about things that really impact my world and the people that I talk to's world, especially from a business point of view. So I'm not going to go too deep into bio, but I would like Dan tell us a little bit about you and your role and about Geekwire real quick.
We're a nationally read tech news site. We're completely digital. We write about Microsoft and Amazon and the big tech enterprise companies here out of the Pacific Northwest. We also write about startups and the VC world, the folks who fund them and everything in between, health tech, the cloud, AI, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're into tech, I think a lot of folks are, that's where a lot of growth in the economy is at. That's what we cover at Geekwire. I've been at Geekwire for almost 7 years. 7 years is September as the chief revenue officer. I and the staff, we sell advertising. We sell sponsorship to events, which are on hold right now. We have partnerships. We have memberships. So a lot of different revenue angles for Geekwire. And that's something that's been under my purview for almost 7 years.
And does that make your role primarily a sales role?
Yes. And while I've led the team, I'm also a day-to-day seller as well. We're a small and scrappy startup. There's 15 of us at Geekwire. And so, if money is to be made, I'm out there making it, selling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So my goal here is to cover some optimism. I feel like we have reason to be optimistic in this changing environment. I believe that our resilience is my other word. That we have reason to, we're a resilient community, not just to salespeople, but I believe people here in the Western Washington area, in terms of really sticking with it. And all of that adds up to me to be opportunity. So those are kind of the catchwords that I would like to focus on. And let me just jump right in. What are you seeing as the biggest challenge professionally that you guys are facing? And I realize it's a big question, but jump in there.
Goodness. First of all, as it pertains to Geekwire, like I said, we're, many media companies are event companies. We have this annual Geekwire Awards that was supposed to be held yesterday.
It's in my calendar.
I'm looking at my watch. So we've postponed, obviously, until May, and we may have to postpone again. And so this is a major part of our business, with a lot of our revenue coming from sponsorships of these events. And right now, here we are talking face-to-face on Zoom because we can't be within 6 feet of each other. That doesn't bode well for companies that do events like ours. Out of that has come an opportunity to do events, but to do them through something like Zoom. This Thursday, we're going to host a roundtable with 100 of the Geekwire's members. That is a new thing that someone can sponsor, and people still want community. They still want to interact with each other and connect. So this is a way we're going to do that. It's just not going to be in person. And so, that's obviously one of the tough things. Everybody's home. At first, last week, we've been at home for the last week. Kind of felt like a snow day. What should I be doing today? Well, ESPN was on a lot. It's too bad there wasn't a lot of sports to hear about. Thank goodness for the NFL and free agency. But so people were hanging out. And, when it comes to doing deals like we do, advertising, et cetera, nobody really had their ducks in a row. Nobody really knew what was going on. And they couldn't walk down to the conference room and conference and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Let's do this with Geekwire. So there's been a pause to business.
You're saying there was a challenge in terms of collaboration.
Challenge in terms of collaboration,
business.
challenge in terms of someone saying, we know we're going to spend a budget like this with you, and here's how we want to do it. Everything slowed down because they weren't collaborating like they would have if they were next to each other in pods or in the office. And so, those are two challenges with advertising with event sponsorships that we've seen at Geekwire. That said, there's a lot of optimism still. We just need to pivot on what we can do right now and then see who has needs to fill.
I love that idea of saying, okay, great, we're going to just make this into a digital event and also sell sponsorships. It does seem that last week, especially, people hit the brakes, right?
Yeah.
We know that everybody knows that there's this fight or flight instinct that we have, but what people forget, I think, is that there's the first move before fight or flight, and that's freeze. And I think we're seeing a thaw in that freeze.
Yeah.
Speak to that just for a quick second.
Directly before this, I was on another Zoom meeting with a customer who, they have a contract with me to do several things, one of which is an event. But they're a financial services group who has been producing some really great content. On Geekwire, you can publish sponsored articles called advertorials. And so I'm talking to them about, like, why don't you up your game? Why don't you come in and share with the world through our platform what they need to know? In some cases, it'll help them plan. In some cases, it'll help alleviate some fear. But it'll get your message out there. And one of the strange benefits of COVID-19 and being a media company, we're up 25% in terms of overall readership right now. So you're reaching more people than you would have otherwise. And so, yeah, I mean, these conversations that we're having, it's about, different than what we saw 10 years ago, 12 years ago with that recession. People aren't just saying, we're just dropping. We're not doing it. They're saying, let's pause, let's reevaluate, and what else can we do instead of what we had originally planned on?
That's great. So not too much taking their foot off the gas, you're saying.
Yeah, it's just, we have this current reality. We don't know how long this is going to be our new normal. Right. But for now, we still have businesses open. We still want folks to listen or buy or whatever. So what can we do now?
Does that mean that there's little change in terms of the outlook for businesses in general? I realize that's a broad statement, but you're talking to people who are interested in having a conversation still. They're not seeing that it's a complete shutdown just yet?
I think you're dealing with the reality that there's a lot of fear. So first of all, you see the layoffs out there in the services industries, right? People who wait tables or tend bars, or they're all out of a job right now. Mm-hmm. So there's fear attached to that. And what will the domino effect be? That said, I think folks realize and recognize that the show must go on. While we're in this pause right now, we're going to come out of it, and folks who are proactive right now are going to be set up for success. And so let's be proactive. And so whether that's we're going to sponsor a meeting on Zoom, or whether that's we have an ad campaign that we can put into effect right now for the next 2 or 3 months. Look, here I sit at home, but I'm having this interview with you because I have access to the internet and this computer. As long as you have that, you can do a lot of business. And so the world's not shutting down completely. And I think that those folks who are proactive are going to come out of this, potentially better on the other side.
So in terms of that proactivity, I love that idea. What's the opportunity for those of us who are in direct sales? I mean, I guess sales leaders as well. I mean, there's a similar alignment between those teams, obviously. So you're seeing opportunity. What does it look like generally for people if you were to give some advice?
Well, I would say that for any seller in any circumstance, you got to understand the universe that you operate in, right? What are the opportunities? What are the pitfalls or the obstacles? That all has changed. What mm-hmm. was a month ago, 2 weeks ago, is a little different today, and probably will be for the next bit of time. And so, one is understand the universe that you're in. How do you do that? For me, and for our staff, it's let's go connect. Let's connect as much as possible with those folks who are our current customers. See what's going on with them. See what their needs are. Needs have changed at this point. But if you don't talk to them, you're not going to know what opportunities exist. What opportunities are there? It kind of depends on the business. And so, like I said, in some cases, it's going to be having an event on Zoom where you can invite folks in for community, where someone wants to sponsor that. Someone wants to get in front of those eyeballs. That didn't exist for us a month ago. We didn't do that a month ago.
Right.
Or are there products that maybe someone didn't promote because it wasn't the biggest part of the business. It kind of is right now because everything else is shut down. But no one knows about that because they've never promoted it before. You don't really know what those opportunities are without talking to a lot of folks, and in sales, no matter what your closure rate is, you got to kiss a lot of frogs, turn over a lot of rocks. And so a lot more of that is needed now. I think there's relationship building that will pay dividends far beyond our current circumstances if folks continue to do that.
So pick up the phone, talk to customers who you already know, see what they're thinking
as much as possible.
And
then
creative.
Obviously there's cold calling, and whether or not, maybe I closed 1 in 10 cold call, or maybe I used to do that. Maybe now it's going to be 1 in 20 or 1 in 30, but let's face it, what else do I have to do right now? Here I am at home.
That's an interesting conversation I'm seeing a lot about, especially on LinkedIn, for example, about, is it okay to call people? Is it okay to have, outbound outreach to people that you don't know? And there's that worry that, oh, well, it's not the right time, or, it's not appropriate. I mean, I'm hearing you say,
I wish I could do a Yoda impression right now. There's no try, there's do or do not do, right?
Yeah.
How do I say
I kind of want to make you do it in a Yoda voice.
The capitalist dick I am. So it's one of these things where it's like, look, I don't care if I have to do something for my company. And if you're going to be offended that I reached out to you cold in this time of need, well, I'm sorry about that. Maybe by the end of this, your skin will be a little thicker than it was before. Like, right. There's no conversation about should I or shouldn't I? Like, you got to do what you got to do. That's my opinion, at least.
So the game plan hasn't changed, just the terrain we're operating in.
Yeah, and obviously
you want to be.
Look, people are going to feel how they feel. People are going to have some tough situations, and you don't want to be. You want to have some empathy towards that. Obviously, we're all in this together. I'm not out there to get your money and run. I'm out there to help you solve a problem if you've got one. That's my role as a seller, and it always has been. So I'm not that, oh, I'm such a good seller, I could sell ice to Eskimos. I hate that guy. No, I'm out there to say, what's your problem? Can I help? I have this platform and I have these assets. Can I help? And so that's really what you're doing right now.
That's an awesome mindset to have. You've got the cure for their cancer, and you just got to find, like you said, you got to turn over a lot of rocks and have the conversations with people to make sure that you're finding the people who do benefit.
Yeah, and no is a fine answer. You're not going to offend me by saying no. It's not our deal right now. But the nice thing is, I got a touch point in, and who knows what'll happen down the road. Like, look, 6 months hence or a year down the road, it'll be helpful that I've reached out to you and tried to talk to you. And so, anyhow.
That's another big one for, I think that, if you were to give some advice to the community, is like, how do you prep now? How do you make sure you keep your feet under you, foot on the gas, whatever metaphor you want, so that whenever this lets up, we're in the position? Like, what's your advice to the community, the sales community in general?
It's nice to feel like you have a semblance of control over your life. Right now, everything else out there is out of control. So what can you control? You can control your attitude. You can control your planning. You can control your outreach. I can't control the situations happening to customer X, Y, and Z. But what I can control is, did I reach out to them and talk to them and see if there was something that I could do for them? I find that being in motion helps me stay in motion. And so just get up and go. And the rest of it is, I'm trying to listen a lot more. It's not, my situation isn't so dire that if this deal doesn't happen, the world explodes for me. But I'm hustling to make sure that I'm not in that place sometime in the future. And so, you also have to, like I said, understand the new universe. Like, look, if I don't have events to sell like I used to, what do I do now? Because we still need the revenue to keep our lights on. I still have journalists to keep in business. And so, it's also, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is paying attention to what other folks are doing.
Yeah.
Being successful out there. Who did an event through Zoom or whatever that worked? And what did that look like? Who's doing roundtables again through Zoom, and what are they asking? What do folks want out there? And so I am a big proponent of seeing smart people do something and stealing that idea for your business if you can.
Yeah, I think that's a good golden rule for people who
Right?
are out talking to other human beings about buying stuff. It's like figure out what's working and do that, and find out what's not working and stop doing that.
Right. But I stay in motion. Keep
Yeah.
trying things. It's very startup-esque. You're A/B
Well,
testing and failing
and,
fast and moving on.
and you didn't talk about this in the beginning, but you were a huge startup guy. You've been in the startup community for decades. And so you've seen some of this has got to be for you no big deal. I see this all the time. Pivot's a word that's just like in part of your DNA.
Yeah.
And so even though given that there's no control of the overall, what's happening in the world, you sounds like you're like, okay, when we are faced with things that happen in the startup world all the time, which are obstacles, we deal with it.
There's a certain amount of grit, I think, that entrepreneurs develop, especially if they've done it over time, where the fear that you have can be allayed by, like I say, like motion. I'm testing to see if this will work. I'm testing to see if that will work. And so it doesn't necessarily change the outcome, but that grit makes you get knocked down and get back up, get knocked down and get back up. I think that's pretty important for a time like this when there's a lot of just fear of the unknown. And if you hang out with that for too long, it can paralyze you. You don't want that to happen. And so what I think, one of the lessons from the startup world that I've been in is try, fail, try again, fail till you hit it. And I think that the folks who are working like that these days will, one, succeed during this time, and two, be way better off at the end of this thing. That's a nice 1-2 punch, especially for the sellers. And I think selling is entrepreneurial by nature, right?
I agree.
I think that you're in that zone all the time where you're sort of hearing the no's, and you develop a little bit of a thick skin because of that, or you flee and you don't sell, right?
Well, you can't pause and take your breath for too long. I'm a big proponent of, hey, listen, if you get some big thing that knocks you down, suck your thumb for a while. That's fine, but get back on. And I'm hearing you say, like, keep that forward motion. I give myself
exactly 5 minutes to mourn a loss. And that's
the shortest time I've heard anybody tell me.
I can mourn I can do whatever I want. I can weep and gnash my teeth. I can roll around on the floor. I can, I don't know how much whiskey one can drink in 5 minutes, but 5 minutes and then back to it, because what are you going to do? If that's done, on to the next one. And so, and that's kind of like I had this deal almost ready to go and it didn't close versus I called you and you said, I don't want to talk to you, on to the next one. I don't mourn at all for that one. I check that box. I get this many no's until I get a yes or a conversation, right? I suspect we're going to be doing what we're doing right now for the next several months. I bet it's going to be summertime before we're back to normal, maybe late summer.
I agree with you on a lot of that. However, I also feel like we've kind of been the kid pushed into the deep end with this remote work. Everybody's dipped their toe in. Everybody's kind of done. Everybody's familiar with like FaceTime or Zoom. But all of a sudden, we've just been shoved in. And from what I'm hearing, it's like, oh, this actually isn't so bad. Do you see like a faster return to sort of business profitability?
That's a good point. And they're talking about what will the new zeitgeist change look like. And so will it be folks working remotely? And I think it could be. I think that thinking about the business of Geekwire, where we have a community, news is fosters community. I do think we want to see our event business come back. We want to convene the community if we can. And so it'll be a little while before maybe we can do that. But yeah, I think you're right with this sort of remote working. It'll be interesting to see what happens because of it. The commute was great today. So.
Right. Yeah. There are some upsides. We've got less pollution. And, okay. Last thing, since we're talking about optimism, resilience, opportunity, give me your biggest opportunity for people who are, in a sales leadership position like yourself.
I would say now's the time to be spry. Talk to everybody and listen, and then respond in kind. What did they say that they needed? Do you do that? If you can do that, do that. I mean, I think that it's time to just to be really nimble. And we sell to solve folks' problems. If what we did before doesn't solve folks' problems now, how can we pivot to do that? And whether it'll be a forever change or a for now change, just do what you need to do. Don't hold fast to the old way, because that's the way it's always been done. If there's anything we can learn from this, is that change is okay, and we can survive this, but you've got to be nimble. Sellers, now's a great time to sharpen up your saw. It's not the time to relax. It's the time to mash the gas pedal to the floor and do all the things. Jeff, I'm glad you're doing this. I think this is great, and I hope that it bears fruit for all of you sellers out there.